Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here is always to shortcut you to being well-informed, slicing through the noise to deliver the truly essential nuggets of knowledge.
And today, we are taking on a titan. We are attempting a true 100-year marathon.
We are. We're plunging headfirst into the history of the Walt Disney Company, tracking its incredible evolution from a tiny cartoon studio founded by two ambitious brothers in 1923, right up to its 100th anniversary celebration.
And all the ongoing, internal and geopolitical challenges the current leadership faces. It's quite a story.
And when we say Titan or Colossus, we are not exaggerating. I mean, the footprint is almost impossible to conceptualize.
Right.
This company has been a Dow Jones Industrial Average component since 1991. They operate across three massive divisions, Disney Entertainment, ESPN, which they own an 80% majority stake in, and Disney Experiences.
And they employ hundreds of thousands of people. Their cultural reach is, well, it's arguably unmatched globally.
It really is one of the great American business stories.
It is. And the core question that really drives all our source material today is this. How exactly did a studio that repeatedly faced bankruptcy, catastrophic IP losses, and massive internal strikes, how did it manage to transform into one of the world's biggest and best-known media conglomerates, securing 135 Academy Awards along the way?
The history is less about magic, I think, and more about sheer, often desperate necessity.
That's the perfect word for it.
Necessity. We've broken this century-long journey into 7 distinct eras, a chronological path focusing on creative pivots, technological leaps, and, maybe most importantly, the aggressive corporate acquisition strategies that really define the 21st century.
Okay.
So let's start right at the beginning. Kansas City, where the dream started and almost immediately failed.
The initial picture is far from glamorous. The company's story doesn't even start in California. It begins with Walt Disney and his incredibly talented animator, Ub Iwerks.
Right.
They founded Laugh-O-Gram Studio in Kansas City, Missouri back in 1921, making these short, topical cartoons.
And the immediate outcome was, well, financial disaster.
Total disaster. Their final short there was Alice's Wonderland in 1923. And it was notable for pioneering the blend of live action with animation, featuring a child actress, Virginia Davis.
But popularity didn't translate into solvency.
Not at all. The studio went bankrupt that same year, forcing Walt to sell his camera and move to Los Angeles to join his brother, Roy O. Disney.
And that move was the true starting gun.
It was. The Disney Brothers Cartoon Studio was officially founded on October 16th, 1923. After they secured a contract with a distributor named Margaret J. Winkler for the Alice comedy series.
This was basically a family operation, right? Run out of a borrowed office.
Oh, completely. Very small scale. By 1926, they had established the Walt Disney Studio on Hyperion Street.
But success was still incredibly fragile, which leads us directly into what our sources call the Oswald catastrophe. An event that didn't just hurt the company financially. It seems like it fundamentally scarred Walt Disney's approach to business forever.
That's the key insight. You have to understand this moment to understand everything that comes after. In 1927, Disney created Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Yeah.
They produced 26 shorts distributed by Universal Pictures through Winkler Pictures. And Walt saw Oswald as his breakout success. He finally had a character on par with Felix the Cat.
Until the harsh reality of the distribution business hit him in 1928.
Like a ton of bricks. Walt traveled to New York to ask his distributor, Charles Mintz, for a higher fee for the next season of shorts.
And Mintz?
Mintz countered by revealing that Universal, not Disney, owned the intellectual property rights to Oswald.
Wow.
This was a common but, often deceitful practice in early film contracts. He had signed it away without realizing.
It was a complete ambush.
A brutal one. Mintz basically told Walt, you can either accept a massive pay cut or I'll just continue the series without you.
And when Walt refused,
Mintz proceeded to sign away 4 of the studio's primary animators, taking his whole team. Only Ub Iwerks remained loyal to the Disney brothers.
So this wasn't just losing a character. It was the loss of his staff and a profound betrayal.
It was a foundational trauma, and you see it right away. This event instilled an absolute paranoia in Walt regarding IP control and the need for vertical integration.
So to replace the lost character, Walt and Iwerks quickly conceived Mortimer Mouse.
Yes, thankfully renamed Mickey Mouse at the urging of Walt's wife, Lillian.
A much better name.
A much better name. Mickey Mouse debuted in silent test screenings of Plain Crazy and the Galloping Gaucho, but they failed to find distribution.
So Walt, having seen the success of the jazz singer, decided to risk everything on a sound cartoon.
And that risk paid off massively with Steamboat Willie in 1928. This short was revolutionary because it was the first post-produced cartoon to use synchronized sound.
And what does that mean exactly?
Post-produced synchronized sound.
It means the audio track was perfectly aligned with the action on screen. They used the Powers Cinephone system, which itself used Lee DeForest's phono-film technology. Before this, sound was often just background noise.
But this was integrated, perfectly integrated. The world had never seen anything like it. And this sound dimension immediately launched Mickey Mouse to global viral fame.
But fame doesn't equal stability, right? The studio was still constantly strapped for cash.
Constantly. Even as the company reorganized in 1930 as Walt Disney Productions Limited.
This reorganization is where they formally created the merchandising division, Walt Disney Enterprises, and even a real estate company.
Exactly. Lild's Realty and Investment Company. Even at this early stage, Roy, who was always the financial backbone, made sure Walt held 60% of the shares and he held 40%. They were trying to secure their future.
And merchandising wasn't just supplemental revenue, was it? It was the whole financial life raft after the Oswald lesson.
It was everything. They knew they had to monetize their IP directly. Initially, the first Mickey Mouse license sold was for a mere $300, just to put Mickey on writing tablets.
Peanuts, real
Peanuts, but crucial peanuts. That changed completely in 1933. They hired a man named Kay Kamen to run merchandising, and he was the commercial genius of the era.
He professionalized the whole operation.
Totally. Within just 2 years, sales generated an astonishing $35 million worth of products. By 1934, Walt himself was quoted saying he made more money from Mickey Mouse merchandise than he did from the films themselves.
And we have that incredible example from the sources, the Waterbury Clock Company.
Yes, they created the Mickey Mouse watch. It wasn't just a popular item. It sold 2.5 million units in 2 years, and it actually saved the Waterbury Clock Company from bankruptcy during the Great Depression.
So that really established the Disney business model for decades to come. The film creates the IP, but the merchandise pays the bills.
That's it in a nutshell.
Meanwhile, the creative output was still pushing boundaries. The Silly Symphony series launched in 1929.
Which became their laboratory, really, for color and visual experimentation.
And they made another incredibly astute financial move, signing an exclusive contract with Technicolor in 1932.
That was huge. Yeah. The resulting short, Flowers and Trees, was the first full-color cartoon, and it immediately won the Academy Award for Best Cartoon.
So color itself became a financial engine, allowing them to charge a premium for the shorts.
Absolutely. And the cultural impact only grew. The Three Little Pigs in 1933 created a national sensation with the song Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf.
It really captured the zeitgeist of the Depression.
It did. And you see, as Mickey Mouse grew in status from this scrappy, mischievous character to a more heroic, almost straight man icon,
They needed a new source of comic relief.
they needed a gag character. That's why Donald Duck, voiced by Clarence Nash, was introduced in The Wise Little Hen in 1934. He provided that necessary balancing act of chaotic, angry energy to keep the gag quota high.
Okay, so with the company finally stabilized by this massive income stream from merchandising, Walt sets his sights on what seemed like the unthinkable in 1934.
A feature-length animated film.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yes, and it was deemed utter madness by industry insiders, who quickly dubbed it Disney's folly. They were certain it would bankrupt the studio.
Even his brother Roy tried to talk him out of it.
Repeatedly, he feared the financial exposure was just too great.
And it was incredibly risky. The costs spiraled. The film exceeded its original budget tenfold, costing a staggering $1.5 million at the time.
To put that in perspective, they were making shorts for a few $1,000s each. This was betting the entire farm.
But the gamble paid off.
Spectacularly.
Yeah.
Premiering in December 1937, it was an immediate critical and commercial phenomenon. It became the highest-grossing film up to that point, initially bringing in $8 million.
And the sources show that, adjusted for inflation, it grossed nearly $1 billion just in the U.S.
It established animation as a viable, profitable art form.
And that success was fueled not just by the story, but by a deep technological commitment.
Oh yeah, the multi-plane camera.
Right. They created it during production, a revolutionary piece of equipment using multiple layers of glass with drawings at different distances.
To achieve an illusion of unprecedented depth in the backgrounds, it made the animation look truly cinematic.
And the dividend of that success was immediate.
The profits from Snow White financed the construction of the new 51-acre studio complex in Burbank, where the company moved in 1940 and remains headquartered today.
They literally built their empire on the success of one feature film.
They did. But unfortunately, the high didn't last. The company was still leveraged heavily, which is why it held its initial public offering in April 1940. It desperately needed capital.
And their next two features, Pinocchio and Fantasia, were critically lauded masterpieces, but commercial disasters.
The timing was just terrible. Pinocchio won Oscars for Best Song and Best Score. Fantasia pioneered Fanasound, an early stereo surround sound system.
It required specialized theaters, right?
Exactly. But World War II had effectively slammed the door on those crucial international markets, and both films bombed at the domestic box office.
And this financial distress, coupled with Walt's increasingly rigid control, led to a massive internal crisis.
The strike of 1941. 300 of the studio's 800 animators, led by Art Babbitt, went on a 5-week strike demanding unionization and better pay.
How did management respond?
Disastrously. Walt publicly accused the strikers of being part of a communist conspiracy and fired many of them, including some of his most talented artists.
So the whole situation had to be resolved by federal mediators.
It did. They compelled the studio to recognize the Screen Cartoonists Guild, but the damage was done.
It resulted in forced unionization and the departure of many key artists, leaving the company severely weakened with only 694 employees.
And it set a precedent of adversarial relations between management and creative staff that would haunt the studio for decades. They were bleeding money. The anthology film The Reluctant Dragon in '41 ran $100,000 short of its own production costs.
So they were in serious trouble.
Very serious. Thank goodness for Dumbo.
Which came out in 1941. It was famously rushed into production on a highly reduced budget.
If cheap, it was short, and it focused on emotion. It was made specifically to recover losses, and it performed well. It infused the studio with badly needed cash.
But the crisis deepened after the U.S. entered World War II.
It did. 500 U.S. Army soldiers actually occupied the Burbank studio for 8 months to protect a nearby Lockheed aircraft plant.
So the studio essentially became a government contractor.
That's right. They signed a contract for 20 war-related shorts for $90,000, creating films like Victory Through Air Power.
And after Bambi in 1942 also performed poorly, Disney executed a brilliant financial pivot, package films.
Yes. Since producing a full narrative feature was just too expensive and risky, they released collections of short cartoons grouped into feature films.
Like Saludos Amigos and the Three Caballeros.
Exactly. It was a low-cost method to stay afloat and keep the lights on through the rest of the decade.
And this period of financial instability cemented two crucial long-term strategies.
It did. First, starting in 1944, Disney began re-releasing its feature films. That built brand nostalgia and provided cyclical revenue streams for the next 50 years.
And second, they successfully diversified their content with the Oscar-winning nature documentary series True Life Adventures, which launched in 1948.
Which showed that quality content didn't always have to be animated.
Okay, so the 1950s weren't just a recovery period. They marked the true, multifaceted rebirth of the Walt Disney Company.
Absolutely. Cinderella in 1950 was their first narrative feature in 8 years and a massive success. It made $8 million in its first year and officially rescued the company from those wartime financial pitfalls.
And this success allowed Walt to dramatically shift his focus away from the day-to-day anxiety of animation production.
He started reducing his involvement in the animation department to concentrate on these massive new ventures. Live-action films, Treasure Island was their first in 1950, and the revolutionary medium of television.
And control was everything, right? Echoing that Oswald lesson.
Always. In 1953, Disney ended its distribution contract with RKO and created its own distribution company, Buena Vista Distribution.
Which guaranteed them higher returns and full control over when and how their films were released and re-released.
And that desire for full control, coupled with the creative need to find capital, is what led to the TV synergy model.
They needed massive promotion for their films and, crucially, a way to fund Walt's big pet project, an amusement park.
The genesis of Disneyland is famously personal. Walt watching his daughters on a carousel and wishing for a place where parents and children could truly have fun together.
Something clean and immersive, unlike the regional carnivals of the time.
Exactly. He abandoned the initial small plan near the Burbank studio and focused on this grand vision founding WED Enterprises, which we now know as Imagineering, in 1952.
And he insisted on thematic storytelling and obsessive cleanliness, which were innovative and expensive approaches for amusement parks at the time.
He bought 160 acres of orange groves in Anaheim for about $6,200 an acre.
The genius, though, was the financing and promotional strategy.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
The $17 million construction cost was partly financed by selling Walt's own home, but crucially, it was heavily promoted through the hugely successful Disneyland television series on ABC.
So ABC took a minority ownership stake in the park in exchange for funding and promoting it on their new national network. Synergy achieved.
The marketing effect was incredible. The Mickey Mouse Club launched in 1955, and after just one season, over 10 million children and 5 million adults were watching it daily,
And they sold 2 million pairs of Mickey Mouse ears.
creating an immediate visible cultural link between the TV show and the IP.
But the true merchandising phenomenon that year was the Davy Crockett miniseries.
Which was part of the Disneyland show. It became a national sensation. They sold 10 million coonskin caps and 10 million records of The Ballad of Davy Crockett.
Our sources noted that this was maybe the greatest merchandising fad the world had ever seen up to that point.
It was an early precursor to the IP feeding frenzy we see today.
So Disneyland opens on July 17th, 1955,
Yeah.
and it was a chaotic day.
Famously dubbed Black Sunday. Ride malfunctions, plumbing issues, food shortages, the heat was oppressive. It was a disaster.
But despite the launch day disasters, the park was an immediate, overwhelming success.
It drew 3.6 million visitors in the first year alone. It instantly became more popular than the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone National Park.
And crucially, the operating success meant gross revenue doubled the following year to $24.5 million.
The parks were the new financial engine, injecting massive cash flow into the company.
Creatively, the animation unit, now guided by the famed 9 old men, continued to push boundaries.
101 Dalmatians in 1961 was pivotal because it introduced the xerography process.
Let's unpack that technological shift for a moment because it had huge implications.
It did. Xerography allowed animators to transfer drawings electromagnetically directly to animation cells, bypassing the time-consuming and expensive process of tracing and painting.
So this wasn't just a technical change, it was an economic one.
Exactly. It saved millions of dollars previously spent on ink and paint, and it greatly sped up production.
Artistically, however, it resulted in that characteristic, scratchier, more stylized look of the 60s and 70s film.
Right, which was a polarizing choice for audiences used to the soft, hand-painted look of, say, Bambi. It was a cost-saving measure with major artistic consequences.
Meanwhile, the musical legacy was cemented with the hiring of the Schumann brothers, Robert and Richard.
They became the exclusive staff songwriters, leading to massive hits for films and the parks, culminating in Mary Poppins in 1964.
Which was a critical and commercial landmark. It won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Actress for Julie Andrews and Best Song.
It was the highest-grossing film of the year, and it directly boosted Walt's plans for his final great vision, the Florida Project.
Walt secretly acquired 27,000 acres southwest of Orlando by 1964, planning the Magic Kingdom and the City of Tomorrow.
Which he later named the Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, or EPCSA. He envisioned a functioning, self-contained utopian city.
And concurrently, park technology continued to advance, with audio animatronics in new rides like Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room.
This really set the stage for the immersive attractions we know today.
But this era of unstoppable innovation ended abruptly. Walt, a heavy smoker, died on December 15, 1966, at age 65 from lung cancer.
The last films he worked on were The Jungle Book, which became Disney's most successful film for 2 decades, and the live-action musical The Happiest Millionaire.
And the leadership vacuum was instantaneous and profound.
The years immediately following Walt's death were marked by a critical handover, but also a deep sense of directionlessness in the creative departments.
Roy O. Disney, Walt's older brother and financial partner, postponed his planned retirement.
He became the first CEO and chairman, determined to ensure Walt's Florida vision was completed.
And Roy's most important legacy here was ensuring that vision was completed under Walt's name.
Yes, he changed the name of the project to Walt Disney World to ensure future generations remembered it was Walt's dream.
Roy also secured essential legislation in Florida, granting WDW its own quasi-government agency.
The Reedy Creek Improvement District. It gave the company unprecedented control over zoning, building codes, and taxation within the park territory. A huge strategic advantage that would become highly controversial 50 years later.
Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom finally opened on October 1st, 1971, costing around $400 million.
And tragically, Roy, having seen the project through, died just 10 weeks later. The era of family management was effectively over.
So non-family members, notably Don Tatum and later Cardwalker, took over leadership.
But the loss of Walt profoundly affected the core creative business. The internal structure designed around Walt's singular, autocratic creative vision. It just stopped working.
The company largely abandoned original animation. The staff dropped drastically from 500 to just 125 employees.
And they only hired 21 new people over 7 years. The 1970s animation output, while it had some successes like The Rescuers in '77, often felt creatively thin compared to the golden era.
And you see the company pivoting heavily toward inexpensive live-action sequels.
Yes, the Love Bug sequels, Escape to Witch Mountain. But the creative dissatisfaction was endemic, and it mirrors the 1941 strike.
That's a crucial connection. The failure to address internal management issues related to creative freedom meant history repeated itself.
It did. In 1979, 12 animators, over 15% of the department, including a future success like Don Bluth, resigned due to creative conflicts, low pay, and low morale.
And started their own competing company.
This creative hemorrhage effectively ended the legacy animation unit. The Fox and the Hound in 1981 was notably the last major work overseen by the remaining 9 old men.
So the company was now reliant almost entirely on the stability of its parks.
And reliance is the right word. Financially, the parks were the only sure thing. Epcot opened on October 1st, 1982, costing over $900 million.
Right. It featured the Future World Pavilion and the World Showcase.
And by 1982, 69% of the company's profits came from theme parks. That illustrates their reliance on the experiences division.
But even this massive attendance wasn't enough to fund their ambitious spending.
No. Despite the success of WDW, the company actually reported losing $27 million that year.
This loss forced them to look for new growth opportunities. Amidst the losses, they did experiment with digital innovation, releasing Tron in '82.
It was one of the first films to extensively use computer-generated imagery, or CGI. A visionary film. But it was ahead of its time, and it didn't initially perform well enough to save the bottom line.
Expansion continued globally, largely through licensing. Tokyo Disneyland opened in 1983.
Costing $1.4 billion. But critically, Disney did not own or manage this park. They simply collected high fees for the license. A low-risk financial model they would replicate later.
And in the same year, they launched the Disney Channel, a pay-to-watch cable channel.
Which also lost $48 million in its first year, despite its subscriber base. They were just spending money faster than they could make it.
The solution proposed by Ron W. Miller, the CEO since 1983, was brand diversification. The traditional Disney brand was too family-friendly. It was limiting their market share.
Which led to the launch of Touchstone Pictures in 1984 for adult and teen-oriented films.
Splash in '84 was the first Touchstone film and a much-needed success.
Followed by Down and Out in Beverly Hills in '86, which was Disney's first R-rated film. It grossed $62 million.
So Touchstone was instrumental in changing the brand perception and showing Wall Street they could compete in mature content.
But the existential threat came that same year, in 1984. Corporate raider Saul Steinberg attempted a hostile takeover, offering $2.75 billion for the whole company.
Disney rejected the offer and instead paid Steinberg $326 million to buy back his 11% stake in a maneuver called a green mail payment.
And they financed this buyback using a massive $1.3 billion bank loan, which plunged the company into $866 million of debt.
This high-stakes drama and massive debt load was the turning point that forced out Ron Miller and necessitated a radical change in leadership and strategic vision.
The company was ripe for a renaissance, or a complete collapse.
And the takeover scare and subsequent debt crisis led directly to the installation of Michael Eisner as CEO in 1984 with Frank Wells as president.
Eisner's mandate was simple: elevate Disney from a theme park operator back into a major global film studio.
And his strategy was genius in its simplicity and scope.
It was. First, he revitalized the content pipeline. Produced an animated film every 18 months, leveraging the creative genius of Jeffrey Katzenberg, whom he hired to head animation.
Second, he leveraged the existing high-margin, non-Disney brand Touchstone in both film and television.
Right. Touchstone Television produced hits like The Golden Girls.
And the financial turnaround was spectacular. Operating income shifted from a negative $33 million in 1983 to a positive $130 million by 1987.
The management triumvirate of Eisner, Wells, and Katzenberg made Disney the box office leading Hollywood studio for the first time.
Successes like Good Morning, Vietnam, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
And the animation revival, the official Disney Renaissance, truly kicked off with The Little Mermaid in 1989. It grossed $233 million and won 2 Oscars.
This era was defined by that pivotal, integrated creative partnership between composer Alan Menken and lyricist Howard Ashman.
They leveraged high-quality music to drive cultural moments, and they delivered massive cultural and financial milestones.
Beauty and the Beast in 1991 was the first animated film ever nominated for the Best Picture Oscar. That demonstrated the brand's critical power.
And then Aladdin in '92 was the first animated film to gross $500 million worldwide.
And the revenue didn't stop at the box office. The films were immediately spun off into Broadway shows.
Beauty and the Beast being the first. And massive repeatable revenue streams through home video re-releases.
Beyond film, IP protection, retail, and synergy were crucial elements of the Eisner strategy.
Yes, the Disney Store opened its first retail location in '87. Expanding to 215 stores by 1990, creating that direct consumer link. They also founded Hollywood Records in 1990.
So the creative and financial momentum was just tremendous. It boosted the company's market value from $2 billion in '84 to an impressive $22 billion by 1994.
Then tragedy struck. Frank Wells died in a helicopter crash in 1994.
Which created an immediate internal power struggle as Eisner, left without his balancing partner, refused to promote Katzenberg to the vacant presidency.
That led to Katzenberg's acrimonious departure, and he then co-founded DreamWorks.
But despite the internal drama, the creative hits kept coming.
Oh, yeah. The Lion King in 1994 became the highest-grossing animated film of all time up to that point, earning $969 million. It demonstrated the brand's power regardless of executive turmoil.
Eisner focused on strategic acquisitions to broaden the company's content range, first acquiring independent film distributor Miramax Films for $60 million in '93.
Which allowed them access to more mature, Oscar-baiting content.
Then came the crucial technological collaboration with Pixar.
Right. The Rescuers Down Under in 1990 was the first feature created entirely using the Computer Animation Production System, or CAPS, which was developed jointly with Pixar.
And this successful collaboration led directly to Toy Story in 1995, the first fully computer-generated feature film.
A massive critical and commercial success. It won an Oscar, and it fundamentally validated the potential of computer animation, forging Disney's relationship with that new technological frontier.
But the single biggest move of the Eisner era was the shift into true conglomerate status.
In 1995, Disney announced the $19 billion acquisition of Capital Cities ABC Inc., which was the second largest corporate takeover in U.S. history at the time.
This deal was a major inflection point. It brought them the ABC broadcast network, but most importantly, a critical 80% majority stake in ESPN.
This acquisition fundamentally shifted Disney from being primarily a content creator reliant on a cyclical box office to a powerhouse of content distribution and networks.
That network stability provided massive financial insulation.
Cable revenue, those monthly subscriber fees paid regardless of movie performance, became a predictable, guaranteed cash flow. It was strategic defense against the inherent volatility of Hollywood production.
This move defined the media landscape for the next 2 decades.
It did. Meanwhile, the theme parks continued to expand dramatically. Disney MGM Studios opened in '89, followed by Animal Kingdom in '98.
The largest Disney park at 580 acres. By the late 90s, the Disney Cruise Line also launched with Disney Magic. The empire was now truly global and multi-platform.
The Disney Renaissance officially concluded with Tarzan in 1999. Following more executive turmoil, Bob Iger replaced Michael Ovitz as president and COO in 2000.
And Eisner's control eroded quickly in the early 2000s. He was battered by post-9/11 tourism drops and creative failures, like the launch of the unsuccessful Go.com web portal.
Then came the Save Disney campaign, led by the aggrieved Roy E. Disney, Walt's nephew, in 2003.
Citing poor management and creative stagnation, which led to Eisner being voted out as chairman in 2004.
Iger took the reins as CEO in 2005 and immediately initiated the strategy that defined the next 15 years, aggressive IP acquisition.
Aimed at ensuring Disney controlled all the globally recognized characters and stories.
The first major move was acquiring Pixar in 2006 for $7.4 billion. This was about talent as much as IP, bringing creative leaders like John Lasseter and Edwin Catmull on board to head Walt Disney Animation Studios and fix the core animation problem.
Iger went even further to prove the value of IP heritage. In 2006, he reacquired the rights to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
He did. And 26 of the original cartoons from NBC Universal. The cost. Exchanging ABC Sports commentator Al Michaels.
Which perfectly demonstrated how deeply Disney valued its foundational heritage IP, even a long-lost rabbit.
The acquisition spree continued in a monumental way. Marvel Entertainment was acquired in 2009 for $4 billion.
And this wasn't just a comic book company, it was a vast library of globally recognized characters instantly integrated into Disney's powerful merchandising and film production apparatus.
Then came Lucasfilm in 2012 for $4.05 billion from George Lucas, securing Star Wars and Indiana Jones.
This immediately allowed Disney to leverage nostalgia and promise a predictable content timeline, vowing to produce a new Star Wars film every 2 to 3 years. This was IP mining on an industrial scale.
And this strategy led to unprecedented box office dominance. In 2016, Disney became the first studio to surpass $3 billion at the domestic box office.
By 2019, they were the first studio to have 7 films gross over $1 billion, including the then highest-grossing film of all time, Avengers: Endgame.
At $2.8 billion, the IP strategy worked.
And simultaneously, Iger began the massive, defining pivot to streaming.
Right. In 2016, Disney bought a 33% stake in BAMTech, a Major League Baseball technology company, for $1 billion. This was the signal.
In 2017, they announced they would terminate the hugely lucrative distribution deal with Netflix to launch their own service.
They were willing to sacrifice immediate revenue for future control.
The final massive piece of this puzzle was the acquisition of 21st Century Fox assets in 2019 for $71 billion.
The biggest acquisition in Disney history. The
Yeah.
New York Times called Disney an entertainment colossus, the size of which the world has never seen.
That purchase brought them 20th Century Fox, Searchlight Pictures, National Geographic, and a controlling 60% stake in Hulu.
It gave them the scale and library required to compete in the streaming wars.
Finally, the culmination of Iger's first tenure, Disney Plus, launched on November 12, 2019.
It bundled content from Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and National Geographic. It hit over 10 million subscriptions on day one and surpassed 135 million by 2022. The move from content creator to primary content distributor was complete.
But the meticulously planned leadership transition was immediately derailed by global catastrophe.
Bob Chapek became CEO in February 2020, with Iger remaining as executive chairman. Weeks later, the COVID-19 shock hit the global economy.
The pandemic forced the temporary closure of all theme parks, resorts, and cruises globally, eliminating the company's largest and most reliable revenue stream overnight.
This led to significant financial distress and mass layoffs. The financial impact was staggering.
Disney immediately stopped paying 100,000 employees, saving $500 million a month.
Iger gave up his salary. Chapek took a 50% cut. In Q2 2020, the company reported a painful $1.4 billion loss.
This dark period resulted in massive layoffs. By the end of 2020, 32,000 employees were laid off, primarily from the parks, experiences, and products division.
The core business built on providing happiness was facing an unprecedented crisis.
And Chapek's tenure was marked by controversy, especially around the Florida Parental Rights and Education Act, often dubbed the Don't Say Gay bill.
Yes. Employees protested the company's initial silence, viewing it as a failure to protect their workforce. Chapek eventually reversed course and pledged support to the LGBTQ+ community.
And what's fascinating here is the political counterpunch. That pledge spurred the Florida legislature to vote to strip Disney of its decades-long strategic advantage, the Reedy Creek Improvement District.
And that move was not minor. The Reedy Creek District wasn't just a tax break. It granted Disney quasi-governmental powers,
allowing them to issue tax-exempt bonds, control their own water and power, and bypass local building codes and zoning laws.
Losing this was a dramatic strategic, political, and financial disaster. It highlighted the new geopolitical risks facing the company.
So the internal situation became untenable. Chapek was ousted in November 2022.
Our sources indicate this wasn't just about poor streaming earnings, though those were bad.
So what was the true tipping point? The financial decline or the profound cultural and political damage from the Florida debacle?
It was a combination, but the loss of confidence was the accelerant. Executives were reportedly dismayed by Chapek's handling of the Florida situation, his restructuring decisions, and what was viewed as an overall failure to grasp the cultural weight of the Disney brand.
So the political turmoil amplified the financial issues, making him an untenable CEO.
Right, and Iger returned as CEO in November 2022 for a 2-year mandate, tasked with finding a successor and more immediately, stabilizing the balance sheet.
Iger's return immediately initiated a massive financial reset. In February 2023, Disney announced $5.5 billion in cost cuts, eliminating 7,000 jobs.
Representing 3% of the workforce. The era of pure growth at any cost was over. Efficiency and profitability were back on the agenda.
And the company was streamlined in 2023 into 3 distinct primary divisions to clarify internal reporting and responsibilities: entertainment, ESPN, and experiences.
An attempt to simplify the colossus. The board of directors also saw significant turnover, indicating a focus on long-term stability and succession planning.
And speaking of ESPN, one of the most remarkable recent brand decisions was the ESPN bet pivot.
Yes, for decades, Disney fiercely protected its wholesome image from anything associated with gambling. Yet they entered sports betting in October 2023 through a partnership with Penn Entertainment.
This is the ultimate financial capitulation, isn't it? Sacrificing decades of brand integrity for guaranteed high-margin revenue from a growing, unavoidable market segment.
It's driven entirely by the need to attract younger audiences and offset the massive linear TV declines plaguing ESPN's traditional cable business. The need for cash outweighed the risk to the brand.
The legal and political challenges haven't stopped either. A November 2022 antitrust lawsuit alleged that Disney inflates prices by requiring streaming services to bundle ESPN and Hulu.
And the political headwinds continue to generate corporate governance issues. In September 2025, ABC indefinitely suspended production of Jimmy Kimmel Live.
That decision drew widespread backlash, and crucially, some shareholders, including the American Federation of Teachers, filed legal challenges,
asserting that Disney may have breached its fiduciary duty by prioritizing improper political and affiliate considerations over shareholder value.
So it's an assertion that the company, in trying to navigate the political landscape, may have damaged its own financial interests. The sheer pressure is unprecedented.
It is. The other latest news concerns park expansion. Disneyland Abu Dhabi was announced for 2025 to be owned and managed by Merrill Group, similar to the low-risk licensing ownership structure they use in Tokyo.
Okay, let's break down the sheer scale of the Disney machine as it's organized now in the 2023 structure.
The first unit is Disney Entertainment, led by Alan Bergman and Dana Walden. This is the content engine.
So it oversees Walt Disney Studios, including Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, 20th Century, Searchlight Pictures, the TV networks, and Disney streaming.
Exactly. This is where all the creative IP is born and distributed.
The second is ESPN, led by James Pitaro. This handles all sports content, products, and global experiences. Disney owns an 80% stake here.
And this unit remains a massive, if evolving, revenue driver.
And finally, Disney Experiences, led by Josh D'Amaro, the undisputed cash cow of the business.
This manages 12 global theme parks, which collectively make Disney the most visited theme park company in the world, doubling the attendance of the second most visited company.
The Magic Kingdom itself is the single most visited park globally.
This division also handles resort hotels, the Disney Cruise Line, and all consumer products, the engine that Kay Kamen originally built.
We mentioned 135 Academy Awards earlier, but let's talk about the cultural impact and innovation. Disney is cited as a pioneer in the animation industry, having produced 790 features.
And the legacy isn't just creative, it's technological innovation born out of necessity. We discussed the multiplane camera and xerography. They also invented CAPS with Pixar and later developed Deep Canvas for 3D backgrounds in Tarzan.
And of course, the industry-standard rendering software, RenderMan.
The award haul is tremendous. 135 Academy Awards, 32 of which went to Walt personally, 29 Golden Globes, 51 BAFTAs, and 36 Grammys as of 2022.
The financial strength remains immense, ranking 48th on the Fortune 500 list in 2023.
Now, in the spirit of a complete and honest deep dive, we have to acknowledge the persistent and significant historical controversies surrounding the company.
Right, which often run counter to the brand's wholesome image. This is a critical part of their century-long story.
Absolutely, and we need to review these impartially. Critiques regarding historical instances of racism are significant.
Noting films like Song of the South, which has never been released on U.S. home video or Disney Plus for perpetuating harmful racial stereotypes.
Other examples frequently cited include the character Sunflower in Fantasia, who was digitally altered in later releases, the Siamese Cats in Lady and the Tramp, who were criticized as Asian stereotypes,
and the Crows in Dumbo, who used jive talk and whose leader was named Jim Crow.
This is a critical part of their back catalog that they are now managing through context and disclaimers on platforms like Disney Plus Up.
Plagiarism is another area of criticism. The most famous example involves The Lion King and its alleged similarities to Osamu Tezuka's anime, Kimba the White Lion.
There are also noted similarities between Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water. Disney has always vehemently denied these claims, but they persist in fan culture and critical discourse.
Regarding social representation, the company is often caught in a difficult political and cultural double bind concerning LGBT+ elements.
They face criticism both for including LGBT+ elements like LeFou in the live-action Beauty and the Beast, or the kissing scene in Lightyear, which led to bans in multiple countries.
And simultaneously for having insufficient representation overall, failing to keep pace with modern societal expectations.
Working conditions are a major concern, particularly at the lower end of the experiences division. A 2022 Disneyland worker protest cited low pay, averaging $13 an hour.
And there have also been past reports of poor working conditions at overseas factories making Disney consumer products.
Finally, the company has faced historical animal cruelty charges. In 1990, the company paid $95,000 to avoid legal action over 16 animal cruelty charges at Discovery Island, involving the beating of vultures and shooting at birds.
These controversies demonstrate that the corporate reality often conflicts dramatically with the polished Magic Kingdom brand image.
Looking back over the last 100 years, what you see is a company defined by a series of near-death experiences, each requiring a radical, often desperate pivot.
They were saved by the immediate necessity of Mickey Mouse merchandising in the 1930s after the Oswald debacle.
Stabilized by the audacious theme park gamble of the 1950s, the true financial anchor, and rescued from internal decline by the Eisner Renaissance.
And finally, they were crowned as the media colossus we know today through Bob Iger's multi-billion-dollar IP acquisitions and the massive all-in pivot to streaming.
Every single survival step, every era of growth, involved aggressive business maneuvers, from establishing their own distribution and new labels like Touchstone to the strategic financial capitulation of the ESPN bet pivot.
So, what does this all mean for the future? We are sitting here today having covered a century of dominance, transformation, and technological leadership, yet the current challenges are entirely new.
They center on audience loyalty and streaming economics. The question isn't whether they can make money, but whether they can maintain their unparalleled cultural relevance.
Consider this. The D23 fan event in August 2024 was noted in our sources as being overwhelmingly dominated by millennials, with Generation Z largely absent.
Right. And theme park experts note that the true measure of Disney's enduring brand power won't be measured by current market caps or subscriber numbers, but by something far simpler and more human.
Which is?
Whether Generation Z chooses to take Generation Alpha, the youngest generation, to Disney theme parks, as generations before them have done.
Will this unprecedented media colossus maintain its cultural grip on the next two generations, or does the future require another radical pivot?
One that moves beyond the nostalgia of the IP they currently rely on. That is the ultimate test of the second century.